Hi. So I wanted to share another video with you guys that is very foundational for my vermicomposting hybrid and my trenching and everything like that. I made this video a couple months ago and it was definitely a raw and real mom bun moment where I just had some food scraps that I needed to process, and I kind of got on a soapbox for a minute. Lots of good information, but I went through and I took notes on some of the things that maybe I needed to elaborate on a little bit more. And I also wanted to let you guys know on this page, or on this channel rather, you're going to see multiple different parts of me. Like some days I might have enough energy to put on makeup and do the dance, right? Some days I'm just doing my thing and it's mom bun and there's like no mascara to be found in all the land. So that's just the channel disclaimer. The other thing I wanted to clarify, there's a couple things, but the other thing I wanted to clarify is that in this food processing breakdown, please do not use your regular food processor. I specifically talk about getting one from ARC. Well, ARC is a local thrift store. So any thrift store familiar to you, near you, please, don't mix this up with whatever you do your rice cauliflower or zucchini for zucchini bread or whatever, however else you use a food processor in your kitchen to eat. Don't mix up these two, because even when you rinse and clean, you will find that there's a level where this food processor is going to embody its job. And that's not the stage we want to eat, right? We're just trying to feed the plants from this source. In here too, I also talk about biochar. And since I made this video, I found out that you don't want to put biochar in where there are worms. You also don't want to necessarily put biochar in with composting. Kind of mixed reviews on it. So when you put it in with worms, it'll suck up moisture, right? It will also pull nutrients that the worms would eat. So my game plan for whenever I do figure out the biochar dance is going to be to mix it in with my 5-gallon buckets of fermented food scraps, because then it's going to get a solid bacterial load, and then I can trench it into my yard or growing space, or even into my vermicomposting hybrid. So that's a new thing I learned. Yeah, you can charge it with compost, you can charge it with chicken poop, but where the worms live is probably not the best, because the biochar will compete for the nutrients that the worms would eat, if that makes sense. Let's see. The only other note I made was about the fermenting the food waste. Actually letting that sit for a good solid couple weeks in the 5-gallon buckets and stirring it up so it doesn't get super freaky anaerobic. I do have it noted to make future videos on bokashi composting and biochar and lacto fermentation. The lacto fermentation, it's the same premise that we make sauerkraut, right? Most of our veg has active yeast on the outside. And so when we pickle with a little bit of salt versus vinegar, we can end up with, well, I don't even think you use salt in lacto fermentation. I think some recipes you can use salt, but the vinegar will kill the active bacteria on the outside of our food. And that's just naturally occurring. You can probably wash it all off if that's not something that appeals to you. But in lactofermentation, that's part of what's going on there. Is it's already present. You're just utilizing the biome of the veg to support the biome of your body. So, yeah, I just wanted to give that little intro before we get into this. This is a longer video, but there's a lot of good information. And if you guys have questions, I will do my best to answer them. So please enjoy, and I will continue spelling out info, and we're all learners, and thank you so much for being here. All right. Good morning. I want to show you guys a step in the process of my Vermi composting hybrid. And it's kind of, I was trying to think of how to do this, because you're actually taking rotten food, like rotten veggie matter from your fridge, counter, whatever, and food processing it to work it into the basin as green matter, right? Because composting takes browns and greens. So I picked the most south things that I have in my fridge that aren't like grody. Whenever I find absolutely disgusting things, though, I ground out in the fact that from decomposition comes life, and remembering the cycle. Sometimes if I have particularly gross things, I'll use my gloves, or I'll, might wear a mask because it like reeks. But what I do, excuse me, I have a lot of stuff going on my counter. I'm making bone broth, all sorts of stuff. This is an ARC food processor. And I have noticed that some things like the butts of lettuce need a little bit of love, just like a simple little chop, because sometimes they will get stuck in the blades. Usually when you get a food processor that is from ARC, it's older, right? But who wants to buy a new one to do worm scraps? So we have the pre-chop with a quick little, sorry, I have my slightly grodier things to the side. It's going to be a little loud. I don't know how to mute myself, but sometimes you gotta go in here and you're just gonna move things around a little bit. Okay, so I have successfully broke it down. Okay, you can put almost anything in this in regards to green matter, right? Kind of standard practice, as with composting, you don't want to do meat or dairy. Citrus, I'm finding mixed reviews on that, because citrus can repel your buggas that like to help you with decomposition and making these things bioavailable for your yard. But if you need to do citrus peels, It's about breaking them down really tiny, which this food processor method does, and not having it be the dominant thing in your compost. Like, so moderation in tiny pieces is what I've been finding. And I don't just limit to like my leafy greens, right? Like, this is going south and I'm going to dump that in there. But I'm going to do more content specifically about this vermicomposting hybrid, because I feel like we get those little vermicomposting bins and we buy the red wigglers, and it's great. They make worm poop, put in our garden, like awesome plant food. But I was contemplating some things. Like, red wigglers are specifically like biologically engineered to eat faster and breed faster, as opposed to the earthworms that we have in our soil. When we use that earthworm poop, I'm skeptical. I don't have proven anything on this, but I have reason to believe that when we're doing those filtered systems, we are not just filtering worm poop, that we are actually catching eggs and then turning around and introducing that out into our garden, thereby introducing a non-native species. I did also find out that earthworms themselves are not native to the US, that they were brought over from Europe and Asia in like the 1800s, but because they've been here over 200 years, we now consider them native. So it's kind of a, feel it out for you. For me, the thing that concerns me is the quick breeding and the ravenous eating, which is exactly why the red wigglers are cultivated for these vermicompost systems. When I think about that in relation to the earthworms that we have now, it's a slower process. Faster doesn't always mean better. Sometimes we need that ebb and flow of things. So, I don't know. If you do vermicomposting in your house, cheers. If you don't want to listen to anything I'm saying about the difference between red wiggler worms and the earthworms that you already have out in your space, I respect that. Just sharing what I'm thinking. Sharing why I choose to utilize the worms in my backyard versus having, I'm going to say a lot because there's a lot going on in my brain, but versus buying a pack. So, teach his own. Do what you want. Those are just my thoughts. What I do with this is I have a 55-gallon drum. I have a couple of them in my backyard. And I'll put this in the 55-gallon drum that has about like half-inch holes in the bottom. And I'll add leaves, spent pots, so like soil that needs like a nutrient recharge, right? I'll throw that all in there, and I'll mix it up with a pitchfork. So I'll stick the pitchfork down, and I'll just turn the handle like this, and I'll water it. Or like sometimes I'll tip the bin, and I'll roll it a little bit. That way that like maintains moisture and oxygen in the soil to support the decomp process. The holes in the bottom allow the worms to come up. Once you hit about a foot depth, the worms are more likely going to cycle within your vessel versus retreating back down into the earth. I've noticed during winter, the blue 55-gallon drums, like the blue plastic ones, I don't know, I'd like to get food grade ones, but they have like a level of insulation. So even if the worms are trapped up into the vessel of the barrel, they run more core mass than being on that outside edges. I'm sure you could do something like insulate it with you know, thrift store blankets or something on the outside and cap it. I've seen, the only other person I saw do this vermicomposting hybrid method, they actually used like the $8 trash cans with the lid, which I thought was great. And I can't remember their name, otherwise I'd spot them on here. But I like leaving mine open because then there's other decomp crew that comes in from the top. You have the potential of getting volunteers because things like bell peppers and squash and stuff, their seeds are less likely to be squashed in this method. Like, so you still end up with volunteers. You can also use this slurry with the food processor to do what's called trenching. So you dig down 6 to 8 inches. If you have critters in your yard that are going to dig it up, you might want to go a little further, but somewhere within that 1 foot of soil depth, and you bury it. From my understanding, back in the day, they didn't use the food processors to cut it up. But the food processors make it more bioavailable, like speed the breakdown. I had this neighbor, I don't know, some like 20 years ago, and he amazing human. His name was Tomas from Cuba, and he was the sweetest dude on the planet, and he would sit out front of his house with his food scraps and scissors, and he'd cut them down into like little 1-inch chunks, and he'd also put those in garden soil bags and then roll up the top and set them next to his front door, south facing, right? So it got all that nice heat, and he made black gold, and I wish he was still around. Amazing human. So I've kind of been collecting things from multiple places and trying to figure out the best way to process this. I am trying to do essentially a third of my yard in-ground composting with the trenching and layering. So as things go, it's going to be interesting. But I've learned some things about like 97% of our food waste end up in landfills. I know it's not accessible for everybody to have a plot of dirt, right? I just know for those of us that are able to, composting our food waste as much as possible can help heal our soil. It can limit the waste. So, what was the other thing? I heard of another thing. So, and I'm gonna try to touch on all of these. I'm gonna try to do little clips and sequences of all of these. But there's this thing called bokashi composting, and I don't know a lot about that. But that's supposed to open up being able to break down dairy and meat, things that we wouldn't normally put in our compost. So I plan on exploring that. I'm also exploring biochar. Right now I live in a space that has a red flag warning, so we can't burn. So I'm not super sure how to handle that. But from what I understand of that is it's a low oxygen burn, so that you're not actually bringing the wood to ash. You're just maintaining charcoal, right? And you squish it up. Then you do something like charge it with vermicompost or composting, chicken poop, rabbit poop. You have to charge it up, because what the charcoal does is it's a bunch of little hotels for all your microbials for your soil, right? So as much as greens and browns play into our soil health, we also need the microbes and bacteria, and we need the fungus, and we need minerals. So it's just looking at all the pieces of the web and doing the best we can day by day. So yeah, I know that's kind of a verbal vomit of random information, but I will try to get a clip of my bins and show you guys my bins. They've kind of been ignored since winter started, but I am doing this food waste process, and then I have like 5-gallon bucket, 2.5-gallon bucket that I put things in, and it's really not bad. Like if you got a strong stomach and you let it ferment for a minute before you put it out in the yard, that's probably not a bad thing. It's probably, like, on my train of thought, helping bacterial load. Normal bacteria, like through lactofermentation, those types of things are a part of us and a part of our ecosystem, right? They're not necessarily a foreign agent. They're part of the ecosystem. So if you can stomach it, cool. But there's just ways to mask up, glove up. I've birthed babies and I've dealt with some really gross things. I've lived on a farm, so I have a little stronger stomach than some. So there are ways to do this, though, and still be greener. If that's something that you're driven to do. One of my friends, Darcy, said it best. She's like one of my heroes, super into urban homesteading, and she's like, you can't avoid everything, right? You can't avoid all the pesticides, all the sugars, all of the negative things. But you can do some things, and it's important for us to do what we can. And I agree with that. I'm sitting here thinking, as I'm using store-bought food that probably has glyphosate on it, like, oh great, I'm putting stuff into my dirt. But I think the systems that we already have established, there's some things that it is really hard to avoid. And just do what we can, Fun fact, the herbicide pesticide industry is a $170 billion industry as of like 5 years ago. It's probably uptick since then. Some of the pesticides were initially established off leftover World War II chemicals. Yum. So chemical warfare that we're putting in our bodies. So, and I really feel like the main way to help heal that is to do what we can. Food is medicine. We need to be present with what we're doing. So, I don't know. That's why I'm here. And I'm a learner. I'm just sharing things. I don't have any degree, but I have life experience and understandings. And I just want to share that because I think that's what we need to do in this time. I had a moment of motherly Tourette's. So I decided to just bring you guys outside and show you. Right now, my yard is very wintered. Very wintered. And I have a lot to do with it. But I'm just going to bring you guys out here real quick and show you. Let me flip this around. Okay. Oh. Okay, so these are my bins. And I just got these as freebies. Okay. I have my planter boxes. I'm going to turn these into cold frames, I think. And I want to set up one more down there. but this is still having some breakdown. I haven't watered it in a while. Let me see about this one. Oh, I even got little plant babies. This one, I mean, you can tell this is retaining moisture better, even though there's like a sticker because my kids don't pull things out. Looks like I might have some little volunteer babies in there. But this is a lot happier dirt. This is more food, broken down food. This soil that I'm putting my hands in right now is very cold. So I'm guessing the worms are probably down a minute. This one's a little more raw. But I mean, you can see there's perlite in here, and that comes from my spent pots that I pour in. Oh, that got dusty really fast. And then this is kind of interesting too. This is one, I'm totally gonna wash my hands, don't worry folks. This is one that I did with just the clay. I need a better camera. Just the clay. And these are actually legumes that I planted in here. This is just kind of an experimental thing because I'm trying to see if just this method can really help with the clay that I have in my soil. I like these bins better. Let me see if I can. Okay, this is gonna be all over the place. Let me see. I want to show you guys. Alright, I'm gonna turn it like this so I can actually see things. I'm gonna move this. I need to get a stand. Okay. Let's check this out. This is the cool part. And yes, I'm gonna cover it back up. Okay, check this out. We got a millipede. We got, that almost looks like a springtail. We got some stuff in here. Got some cool shells. Thank you for the presents. Nope, there's another one. Gotta be so soft with these. I like garden presents. They're fun. But you can see this is clay soil. Like, and it's still very clayey, right? But the worms have worked this. The worms have come here to go up underneath the bin. Let's put you right here, my guy. I'm gonna cover them back up so they don't get too cold. But you can kind of see, like, in comparison, even this. Oops, I gotta pull these guys back over. Even this. This is way happier dirt. And you can do a lot when you have all the buggers. Sorry, guys. You can do a lot when you just have to give them something to work. You have to give them materials that matter. You have to practice stewardship and think about what they need, you know? So that's the, I am going to need 2 hands for that. That's the biggest thing, is looking at the space you're in and listening to it, you know? I don't know. My yard right now, I have poop duty to do. I have some cleanup to do. Some fences that need work. Lots of branches. Lots of branches. Trying to take those for biochar, but again, I can't burn them right now. So, yep. That's my 2 cents on the Vermi composting hybrid and kind of what I do with it. It's kind of a neat little method, and it does still take time and energy, but I think it's worth it. So that's what I do. I don't know if there's anything else I want to show you guys out here right now. It's kind of rough. It's all a little rough. But with these 60-degree winter days, we can probably be out here a little more this winter than I have in previous winters. So, alright, well, I hope everybody has a glorious day, and thanks for watching. And I don't know where I'm posting this, but you know, if you like what you hear, even if it's a little rambly, this is kind of the vibe, all the connections, and just what I'm trying to get done. My backyard's my lab, and I'm learning right along with you. I just want to share what I've learned. So, yep, that's what we're here for, and hope everybody's doing well. Have a great day.